Good morning, everyone, and happy Friday. My name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You could find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS, and as always, I'm here to help you break down tonight's MLB DFS main slates on both DraftKings and FanDuel. If you haven't already, please like the video. Also, subscribe to the channel. That helps us get more free content like this out to you on a regular basis. Also, if you're not a member of Occupy Fantasy, check the links in the description below. As a member, you get access to the model I'll be using throughout the video. We also have a single lineup builder, multi-lineup builder, and a private Discord server full of DFS pros to help you improve your game. For MLB, we also have the Daily Plug article, of which I'm a contributor, where we will highlight our favorite arms, stacks, and bats for each main slate. Without further ado, let's get into it here. We have a massive 14 game slate tonight. I know some of those in Discord, we kind of got an inside joke going. Over under 35 minutes on this 14 game slate, setting that line at a plus 220. I think we can get under it here. I'm going to do my best to go pretty quickly through these games. But yeah, I get a habit of liking to touch on every single matchup. I want to talk through every single arm and really just at least give a little bit of credence to every single matchup here because on these massive slates, it's very easy to overlook decent spots. I am going to pull up a notepad file as I always do. And at the end of the video, I will kind of give an overview of where I stand, which arms I think are worth rostering, as well as which stacks we'll be honing in on. So yeah, let's get into it here. Um, First game on the slate, we have Sandy Alcantara and the Miami Marlins taking on Trevor Williams and the Washington Nationals. So, Sandy coming off that Cy Young year, looked a lot better last season. So it's really no surprise to me, sorting by OF index, that he's not as high in the model as he has been in years past. So he's just outside the top 10 here. I do think he's viable against Washington. The issue is the Nationals really don't strike out much, especially against right-handed pitching. Obviously not the most threatening lineup in terms of upside, but when you get a team like that that doesn't strike out much, it makes it tougher to want to roster pitchers against them. So Sandy, 9,100 on DK, 8,800 over on FanDuel. I will say he's in play, but on such a big slate, he's really not a priority. Trevor Williams on the other side, certainly not a pitcher I'm ever all that interested in. The 5,800 price on DK is somewhat tempting against the Marlins, but he's been mostly terrible, so really no surprise that we don't have much interest in him either. Just taking a quick look at the stack model just to make sure neither team is popping here. We see Washington towards the bottom, Miami towards that bottom half, so really no priorities at all from this first game. So let's move into the next one on the board. Here we have Domingo Germán and the New York Yankees taking on Tanner Houck and the Boston Red Sox in Fenway Park this evening. So Germán hasn't been terrible. At the same time, he really hasn't been an arm you can trust consistently. Obviously, Fenway is a hitter's park. Herman is coming off back-to-back quality starts, but the price just isn't all that forgiving for him here. He is above 9K on both sides, so I don't have all that much interest in him. Then Tanner Hoke, he hasn't been terrible coming off a quality start of his own. He's done a little bit better limiting damage this season, but the K upside hasn't been as high. And while this Yankees lineup obviously isn't as dangerous without Aaron Judge, they should be relatively healthy tonight. I think we see Rizzo, Torres, and Harrison Bader returning from the IL in the middle of that order. So I really have no interest in either pitcher here. It wouldn't be insane to me to play Herman, but on a 14 game slate again, over 9K, I don't think we have to prioritize him. Then just checking out the stacks page again, kind of both in the bottom half. I don't think we really have to look too deeply into either team here. It is favorable hitting weather. It should be around 80 degrees and humid in Boston. Both teams showing around a 5 implied team total. So there is some upside in those stacks if you want to go there. Wouldn't fault you for it. But again, 14 game slate, and this is going to sound a little bit redundant. And more so as we go through this video, there are a lot of good options. So we really just want to hone in and focus on those that are worth prioritizing. Next game on the board here, we have Miles Mikolas and the St. Louis Cardinals taking on Tyler McGill and the New York Mets. Mikolas has been better than expected this season, but he's another arm that really doesn't offer much in terms of K upside. Sub 8K on both sides, borderline GPP viable, but not something I'd really be considering. Tyler McGill on the other side has not been very good. He had a few nice starts last season, coming off a start where he allowed 7 earned runs, though really one of the weaker arms on the board here. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Cardinals popping in the model, but we usually only see them at the top against lefties. McGill obviously a righty, so not really a spot we have to hone in on. And then again, I mean, I do respect Nicholas enough to mostly get away from Mets bats. And I just want to say this is one game where the weather could be a concern. Looks like things should clear up, but it's so early in the day right now. It's really tough to say for sure. So if you do have interest in this game, I personally don't. Really keep an eye on that weather. Next game on the slate, we have Dinelson Lamet and the Colorado Rockies taking on Jared Schuster and the Atlanta Braves. So Dinelson Lamet, once a highly regarded prospect in the Padres system, now kind of laughing, not a laughing stock, that's pretty brutal, but certainly one of the worst arms on the slate and one of the worst starting pitchers left in the league. Schuster here going for the Braves hasn't been great, but obviously the better arm in this matchup. I really don't have interest in arms from either side here. Just going to confirm that Schuster isn't towards the top. Yeah, cheap enough to maybe blink at, but for me, again, 14 game slate. I don't know that we need to get to him here. But yeah, let's take a look at Lamet's numbers. 458 WOBA allowed to opposing hitters, 253 ISO. Much worse to lefties, which is why I had Matt Olson pulled up at the start of this video. He's also the cover. Feature on this video. In my opinion, the most likely to home run on this entire slate, and I think the model agrees that he's one of the best bats on the board. But the Braves, really, the first stack I'm going to write down here as a top stack. I mean, love Atlanta um, versus Lamet. And we can favor the left-handed hitters. Michael Harris at the bottom of the order, if you're looking to get a little different, has been outstanding, just tearing the cover off the ball this week. But yeah, let's go over to the batters page. And if you are using the model, you can do this for any stack where we'll kind of rank them by OF index, see what's popping. And yeah, showing a 7+ run implied team total here, which is absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, Matt Olson profiling is one of the best bats on the board. No surprise at all to me there. Harris has over a 200 ISO. Not popping towards the top. I think that's mostly a reflection of his spot in the order. But like I said, if you're looking to get a little bit different with this Brave stack on a 14 game slate like this, I do like the wraparound. I really do like Michael Harris here. I am favoring the left-handed hitters, but guys like Acuna, Ozuna, Murphy, all solid from the right side as well. So really, really, really like the Braves here. They're going to be popular though, so mixing some of the bottom of that order. Again, really like Michael Harris, and if I was betting anyone to homer today, it'd probably be Matt Olson, although I don't expect the odds to be all that favorable. On the other side of things, like I said, Schuster hasn't been great, just not a ton of K upside, just a 16% K rate this season. The Rockies' offense, not bad. We actually have them ranking pretty highly in the model right now. A little bit surprising to me. I think you could go ahead and bet the over on this game if you're in a state that has legal sports betting. But Schuster's done a decent job limiting power. And still no CJ Crone, so this offense isn't all that dangerous against lefties, especially away from cores. So the Rockies are viable here. They're going to be very low owned. Guys like Diaz, Tover, Profar, and Grichuk are appealing. Coco Montes recently called up. Montero has been better in seasons past, hasn't looked great this year, but they do have enough righty power to maybe consider. But for me personally, 14 game slate, I'm not rushing to get to them. I know they are rating highly in OF index, but every other category, they're kind of in the bottom half of the slate. So not going to rush to Rockies, but love, love, love the Braves bats, especially the left-handed hitters for Atlanta. Moving into the next game on the slate now, we have Kevin Gausman and the Toronto Blue Jays taking on Martin Perez and the Texas Rangers. Clicking over to the pitcher page, what do you know? No surprise here. Kevin Gausman popping as the top arm on the board. So this is a little bit tricky. Gausman coming off an ugly start. I'll quickly pull up his stats and game log on my other screen. And yeah, it's a tough matchup against Texas. So last time out, 6 earned runs allowed, but his 2 starts before that, he had 10+ Ks. So there's a little bit of risk here, but it feels kind of boom or bust. But at such high ownership, maybe you can get away from him in tournaments. I think in cash games, he is one of the better plays, even against a tough Texas offense. But yeah, just pulling up more statistics on my other monitor here. Gausman, limiting opposing hitters to a 110 ISO this season, 269 WOBA, 34% K rate, just outstanding numbers all around. And this is a very dangerous Rangers lineup. They also K around 23% against right-handed pitching. So Kevin Gausman, one of the better arms on the slate. Tricky matchup, but massive, massive upside if you can get to him and afford him here. I do really like Gausman in this spot. As for Martin Perez, I really don't have much interest. Wouldn't be surprised to see Toronto getting some love in the model. Looking for them here. There they are. Yeah, kind of just outside the top 10. I mean, they do have upside. Perez hasn't been terrible, hasn't been very good either. Certainly not on the type of run he was last year. Um, leading into the All Star break. So I don't have much interest in Perez, but I'm not crazy about Blue Jays bats either. If you were going to play some Blue Jays bats, I would certainly favor the right-handed hitters. No surprise in that regard. Bo Bichette swinging a hot bat. Matt Chapman always a monster against left-handed pitching. Um, so they have a few one-offs here, but I don't know that this is a team I want to like five-man stack or four-man stack on FanDuel. I'm not drawing much ownership. They do have upside against Perez, but again, 14-game slate, we got a lot to look at, and I don't know that they're necessarily going to be a priority here. Next game on the slate, we have Tyler Alexander and the Detroit Tigers taking on Joe Ryan and the Minnesota Twins. Joe Ryan started the season amazingly. He's kind of come back down to earth over his last couple starts. He did post back-to-back quality starts against Toronto and Cleveland, so he has been solid. But he's expensive, and I think that's the reason he's not going to get much love here in the model. Where are you? Actually, I don't know that. Oh, there he is. Yeah, just floating around that top 10. 10-6 over on DK, 11-4 over on FanDuel, and trying a ton of ownership. So I do like him here. Obviously, it's an outstanding matchup against Detroit. Sonny Gray was looking good until I think he got hurt and pulled last night. But yeah, I mean, Detroit can be pesky at times, but Ryan does have a 28% K rate on the season, holding opposing hitters to a sub 250 WOBA, just a 106 ISO. And again, this Tigers lineup around a 24% K rate against right handed pitching. So yeah, I do like Ryan. I think once the Tigers lineup comes out later in the day, maybe he climbs up the board a bit. Certainly more of a high risk play, but if this ownership sticks, I think I'd be comfortable fading him. He's just a little bit over owned for that very, very expensive price tag. But it is an outstanding matchup. Obviously, you feel better about him than maybe going to Gausman in Texas. But on paper, probably a little bit over-owned as things stand. On the other side of things, we have Tyler Alexander. This Twins offense seems to be getting healthy. I know they just pulled Buxton off the IL. Alexander hasn't been very good. Really have no interest in him. What do you know? He's the bottom of the pitcher model here, so no surprise there. So yeah, Minnesota just outside the top five. I actually really like them here. I think they're worth talking about and kind of thinking into which bats are worth honing in on. Um, no surprise at all. Brian Buxton towards the top. I know Correa had some issues getting signed in the offseason because of ankle injuries and things like that. He seems 100% healthy, hitting the ball harder than he has all season. So I really like him here. Don't mind Krylov, Kyle Farmer, and then Donovan Solano remains one of the better value plays on both sides. Just 2,400 on each side. Did hit a home run last night. He does get pulled late in games. If they go to a righty after Alexander, he is a pinch hit risk. But I do really like the Twins here. Um, and I'm just making a note. Favor the right-handed hitters. Obviously, no real shocking surprise or anything there, but don't be surprised to see Kepler maybe pinch hit for Solano, something like that. But yeah, Bucks and Korea, definitely the anchors of this stack. Really, really do like the upside for the Twins. So keep an eye on that one for sure. Moving into the next game on the slate, we have Andrew Abbott and the Cincinnati Reds taking on JP France and the Houston Astros. So since Abbott's got the call out for, or the call up rather, for Cincinnati, he's been outstanding. Zero earned runs allowed through his two starts. Just a 0.53 ISO, obviously very small sample size, sub 200 WOBA. I don't know that we see that hold tonight. But yeah, I mean, he is very cheap. He has shown massive upside. The DK price of 7,100 is cheap enough for me to consider him. 95 on FanDuel certainly feels a little bit inflated. The Astros still without Jordan Alvarez, but they only have a 21% K rate against left-handed pitching. So I do like Abbott here on DK. He's very, very risky though. Would only use him in high-risk contests, so I'm just going to make note of that. But yeah, obviously Houston not as dangerous with Alvarez out of the lineup, and it probably is going to take MLB teams a little bit longer to figure out Abbott. So for now, I like him. I think he's fine on DK at 7,100, 9,500 over on FanDuel though. A little bit tough to stomach. DK only high risk. And then yeah, really no interest in Houston bats. Um, only 154 ISO against lefties this season, which is certainly down from seasons past. So wouldn't mind some Abbott, but you're looking at a pretty high total for Houston. So it is kind of a boomer bust type of play. On the other side of things, we have JP France, another young arm who's been really solid this season. France here against Cincinnati, pitching at home, coming off back-to-back quality starts. Pulling up his metrics. Come on. Any second now. But yeah, while I wait for that to load, France 7K over on DK, 9K over on FanDuel. Really not drawing any ownership at all as things stand. I think we have to keep an eye on this one though. But personally, I don't mind him here. Like I said, he has been excellent. And while this is a good lineup for Cincinnati, especially with the call-ups of McLean and De La Cruz, they do strike out a lot. I don't know why this page won't load for me. Very, very frustrating. Come on. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so France, he is allowing power to righties, 288 ISO, which obviously isn't good to see, but he is holding opposing hitters to a sub 315 WOBA, around a 21% K rate. So he's due for some regression, actually. Um, and then looking at the stacks, we do see Cincinnati kind of floating outside the top 10. I don't think it would be crazy to play Reds here, but on the road in Houston against France, who's done a good job limiting damage, we're still waiting to see bigger sample size on him before we really make any assumptions about his metrics. So I'm not crazy about France. I don't mind the DK price though, but I respect him enough to probably not want to get to Reds bats here. So we can move into the next game on the slate. We have Rich Hill in the Pittsburgh Pirates taking on Julio Teheran and the Milwaukee Brewers. So I was talking to a couple of the guys in chat this morning about Tehran when he got called up. Um, I thought he was going to be terrible. I mean, he struggled most of his career. Really did not expect him to be putting up the numbers he is. And the thing is, even though he's been really solid, he's been getting outs, winning games, et cetera, he has not been striking out a lot of batters at the 15% K rate. Pittsburgh definitely an underrated offense. So while Tehran has been good, 8,300 over on DK, 9,700 over on FanDuel. I think he's overpriced here, so I really have no interest in him. And then we have Rich Hill. Good old Dick Mountain. Um, 212 ISO allowed to opposing hitters, 228 two right-handed hitters. So I think we could maybe look at some Milwaukee bats here. They're not really popping in the model all that aggressively. They do have a top 10 implied team total. If you do go to Milwaukee bats, I would look at Contreras and Weimer first. Both have very beefy ISOs against left-handed pitching this season. Owen Miller leading off, probably a decent piece of value, but really not a stack we have to necessarily prioritize. Moving into the next game on the board, we have Patrick Sandoval and the Los Angeles Angels taking on Brady Singer and the Kansas City Royals. So just taking a look at the model first, Singer towards the bottom, no surprise there. Sandoval towards the middle, another not shocking revelation there. And yeah, so Sandoval, usually in seasons past, he's been kind of known as a boom bust arm, very high upside, but a low floor. This season, only a 15% K rate, but he's kind of limiting damage well. So he's kind of the opposite of what he's been in seasons past. So it's really tough to get a clear read on what he's doing right now. But yeah, if you look at the stacks, KC towards the bottom, I do think guys like Bobby Witt and Sal Perez have upside in a matchup like this. They hit lefties really well. Sandoval, though, not as much K upside as seasons past, so I really don't have any interest in him. On the other side of things, the Angels are going to be interesting here. The second best stack on the slate in terms of OF index rating. Singer, 371 WOBA allowed to opposing hitters, 215 ISO allowed to opposing hitters. Been hit really hard. He is one of the more volatile arms in the league. He's capable of being very annoying to stack against. We've seen games. He had a game at home against Colorado where he had 7 Ks, no earned runs allowed. But last time out, 4 Ks, 4 earned runs allowed. I do not like this matchup at all for him here. Really, really do like these Angels bats. So I'm going to go ahead and write them down. But you can look at the both righties and lefties here. Otani's been tearing the cover off the ball. One of the more expensive options on the slate. Obviously, we really like Matt Olson. I think they're priced similarly. On FanDuel, you can play both. I think you can play both on DK as well. Yeah, because Otani has outfield eligibility. But in order to do that, you're really going to have to punt pitching. But I do think Otani's one of the better bats on the slate. No surprise to see Trout there. He hasn't been great this season, but still, in a matchup like this, I do think he has solid upside. Don't love the price on him. Renfro, Walsh, excuse me, Drury, Ward, all solid. I think Tice hit a home run last night if you're looking for a punted catcher. He's not terrible. But yeah, really tough not to like the Angels here against Singer. Singer, very volatile when he's off. He allows a lot of power, and this Angels offense has been hitting the ball pretty well, especially guys like Otani towards the top of the order. So really, really, really like the Angels. No interest in pitching here, and I'm not all that interested in the KC bats either. Moving into the next game on the board, we have Tristan McKenzie in the Cleveland Guardians taking on Zach Gallen and the Arizona Diamondbacks. Excuse me. So McKenzie, another arm who's kind of boomer bust in nature, usually a very high ceiling but a low floor. Really getting a late start to his season, and I mean, yeah, his last two starts are kind of a microcosm of who he is as a pitcher. His first start of the season, 5 innings, 10 Ks, no earned runs allowed against Minnesota. Then last time out, 5 earned runs, 5 Ks against Houston at home. He's back on the road here. Really, really tough matchup though against the Diamondbacks. So McKenzie has some upside, but I do not like the price on him on either site. Probably won't get to him again. 14 game slate. I think there are safer options, one being Zach Gallen. So Cleveland, another team kind of similar to Washington in that their offense isn't all that great, but at the same time, they don't strike out all that much. So just a 19% K rate this season against righties. Gallen 27% K rate, holding opposing hitters to a sub 100 ISO though. So really high floor on him. 10-2 over on DK, 10-8 over on FanDuel. In my opinion, reasonably priced on both sites, and I don't think he draws much ownership due to that lack of K upside. So I'm going to go ahead and probably get to some Gallen tonight. Again, more of a floor play, not expecting a massive upside out of him. But at the same time, I don't know that you necessarily need it. A lot of volatile arms towards the top of the slate in tougher matchups. So there is a world where Gallen ends up optimal even without a ton of strikeouts if he can pitch late into this one and limit the damage. But I really don't have much interest in bats from either side of this game. Wouldn't shock me to see Arizona tag McKenzie as he did struggle last time out, but on paper, it's really not a matchup we have to be prioritizing. Moving into the next game on the board, we have Taijuan Walker and the Philadelphia Phillies taking on JP Sears and the Oakland Athletics. So Walker's been better than expected, but so have these A's bats. So this is kind of a tricky one in that regard. Just pulling up Walker's game log on my other screen. Of course, it's barely loading, going very slow. So yeah, let's try to click to his stats instead. So yeah, Walker, 19% K rate, not a ton of upside for fantasy, which is what we're really looking for here. The A's have been hitting the ball pretty well, but they also K nearly 25% of the time against right-handed pitching. So let's see the price on Walker. I'm not crazy about him, but it's 7K flat and 8,600 over on FanDuel. I think there's crazier plays to make on this slate. I think he could have a good game here in a favorable matchup. But at the same time, I mean, it's not something I'd call really a priority. On the other side of things, JP Sears, 22% K rate on the season, but allowing a 258 ISO to right-handed hitting. Um, so yeah, I think the Phillies are going to be a solid stack here. We're going to have to talk about. But yeah, they're lower in the model than expected. I mean, they rank really highly in WOBA and team total, but they don't have a ton of power from the right side. I mean, guys like Realmuto, Baum, Turner all look good here. Castellanos probably my favorite bat from the Phillies. So I don't mind them as a contrarian option. I'm going to go ahead and jot them down, even though the model doesn't like them much right now. Um, but yeah, I mean, their two best hitters in terms of power probably Schwarber and Harper, and Sears has done a good job against lefties. I think that's kind of what's driving them down. But yeah, they're a high risk only play, but I wouldn't be surprised to see them climb up in the model a little bit, just knowing that Sears has allowed a lot of power this season. Um, Moving into the next game on the slate, we have Shane McClanahan and Yu Darvish. McClanahan for the Rays, obviously, taking on Darvish in San Diego against the Padres. So yeah, no surprise to see McClanahan towards the top of the model. Obviously, a very difficult matchup here against San Diego, though. 28% K rate on the season for him, sub 290 WOBA allowed to opposing hitters, 141 ISO. Um, and yeah, coming off a solid start where he struck out five Rangers, allowed 3 earned runs though. That technically is a quality start though. And his start before that, 5 Ks, 1 earned run allowed. So it looks like his K rate's down a little bit, but at the same time, he's still one of the better pitchers in baseball. This is the type of matchup where I think ownership is going to kind of drive where we go. If he remains under 20% on DK and 10% on FanDuel, I think he's a solid option. If he were to be very popular, though, this is the type of spot where you could maybe stack against him and hope to gain some leverage. But yeah, personally, I don't mind McClanahan here in a tough matchup. Just writing him down. But yeah, he's kind of high risk. Uh, in a tough spot against the Padres. Excuse me. On the other side of things, we have Yu Darvish kind of just floating around the top five. same story for him. Very tough matchup. He does have solid upside. Hasn't been as consistent as McClanahan. No real surprise there, but around a 27% K rate on the season, holding opposing hitters to a 170 ISO, which isn't great, but a 301 WOBA, which is pretty solid. This Rays offense obviously very dangerous. But yeah, he's a little bit cheaper than he probably should be. 8,100 over on DK. 31% owned, 20% showing on FanDuel. So you Darvish, tough matchup, but too cheap. And yeah, this Rays offense obviously very dangerous, but it's not like they're one of these teams that doesn't strike out. So um, I like his upside, too cheap, but tough matchup versus TB. So yeah, not a ton of great value arms on this slate, honestly, for a 14 gamer. I do think Darvish is going to be popular for that reason. Tricky matchup. You could maybe play the Rays as a leverage option here. Um, but yeah, I mean, we're showing them actually just outside the top five, around top 10 stack. So yeah, I think the model agrees that they have some upside here, but this is another spot where I'd consider playing the arm or the stack. I do like Darvish, but I do expect he's going to be very popular. Moving into the next game on the board, we have Sean Manaea coming in after the opener, John Brebbia for the San Francisco Giants, taking on a debuting Emmett Sheehan for the Los Angeles Dodgers. So Sheehan's not in either player pool yet. Keep an eye on this. I know FanDuel's done a really good job this season updating the player pool, kind of adding him later in the day. Sheehan could be that value arm that we want. Again, not in the player pool yet, but I do think we see him in there by the end of the day. Obviously, some risk. He's making his major league debut here, but he's been mostly outstanding um, in the minor leagues. And he's fully stretched out. He pitched on the ninth, threw around 94 pitches, so he is capable of going deep into this one. I certainly respect him enough to not want to get to Giants bats here, but I'm really hoping he gets dropped in the player pool for cheap and people are hesitant to play him because I do like his K upside. We've seen him strike out 10 like multiple times this season. And yeah, the Giants, they are a dangerous offense, but they also strike out 26% of the time against opposing pitchers. So I do really like Sheen here if he gets added to the player pool, and that is a big if on a 14 game slate. Hoping the sites both accommodate us in that regard. On the other side of things, though, with Manaea, I definitely want to get to some Dodgers just outside the top 10 here. So make sure you are honing in on righties because Brebbie is the listed starter. Manaea is going to get the bulk of the innings, though, and Manaea has a 292 ISO allowed to right-handed hitters. So I'll go ahead and pull up the batters page. We've only done this a couple of times through this video. I'm really trying to hit that under today on the time of video. But yeah, no surprise the righties are popping towards the top. That's Betts, Smith, and Martinez. Definitely your three priorities here. Freddie Freeman essentially matchup proof. He has a 170 ISO against lefties, so no problem playing him at low ownership if you do want to get a little bit different. But he's expensive. First base is loaded, so I'd probably just hone in on the righties, but I do really like Dodgers bats, um, primarily against Manaea. Favor right-handed hitters, and what do you know? We have only one game left to get through here. Michael Kopech in the Chicago White Sox taking on Brian Wu and the Seattle Mariners. So Kopech. He's been having a bit of a resurgence lately. 9,300 on DK, 9,800 on FanDuel. One of my favorite arms on the slate, and he certainly comes with some risk. Obviously, Seattle has a lot of power, but in that same breath, Seattle also strikes out 26% of the time against right-handed pitching, that being their projected starting lineup here. Um, Kopech coming off a quality start. He's K'd 6+, or no, he didn't technically get the quality start against the Marlins because he only won 5 innings, but he did not allow an earned run, and he's K'd just going through his game log. 6 his last time out, 9 the game before that, 10 the game before that, 9 the game before that, 10 game before that. So I think we see 7 or 8 strikeouts out of Kopech here. So even if he allows an earned run or two, I think he's a good bet to hit value, sub 10K. One of my favorite arms on the board tonight. Obviously, some risk again against Seattle, but I love his K upside. Um, Seattle. Another interesting option here. We have Brian Wu, just outside the top 10. Pretty well regarded prospect coming into the league. He got shelled in his debut, but since then, I mean, he's looked a lot better. Again, we're dealing with very small sample sizes on him. The last time out against the Angels on the road, 2 earned runs, 7 strikeouts in just 4 innings. So I don't know that we can count on Wu to go deep into this game, but 5,400 on DK, 6,500 over on FanDuel. I've mentioned we're really lacking value here. Brian Wu, a value option I'm going to be considering um, against the Chicago White Sox offense. So, pretty interesting slate tonight. I mean, the Braves are going to be the top stack. I'm just going to pull up my notes here. We got through the game by game pretty quickly. But yeah, definitely love the Braves. They're going to be chalky. While I do that, let me pull up the stack page so we have that in the background. But yeah, against Lamet, favor the left-handed hitters, but Lamet's really not good to righties either, so don't be shy. We could definitely take a look at the Angels here against Brady Singer. Clear upside, Otani tearing the cover off the ball. Really like them in this spot. The Dodgers, Manaya is going to be getting the bulk of the innings, so favor the right-handed hitters. That's Betts, Smith, JD Martinez. They all look good. Minnesota Twins getting Buxton back and Correa healthy has certainly boosted their upside. Tyler Alexander, mediocre lefty on the mound for the Detroit Tigers, so I do like the Twins here. And then the Phillies are going to be pretty high risk. Let me go ahead and pull up their matchup against JP Sears. But Sears has allowed a lot of power to right-handed hitters this season. So those are my favorite stacks. We also see Colorado popping towards the top of the model. Again, I do think they're in play here. I just wish their lineup was a little bit deeper, but Schuster, another mediocre lefty, so they're going to have some upside here. Wind blowing out in Atlanta, not a park that really wind matters all that much, but it's not going to hurt. So yeah, I do like the over 10.5 runs there in that game as well, if I were betting. But then yeah, top pitchers tonight we have Gausman against Texas. He's going to be popular, but it's a tricky matchup. Love Michael Kopech's K upside against Seattle. Some risk though. They do have power. Kopech allows home runs from time to time. So we'll hopefully if he does it, it's with no one on base. Brian Wu, one of the only value plays I like on the slate. Definitely worth considering here against the mediocre White Sox offense. They have been hitting the ball better, but it's still not a spot I'm necessarily afraid to play arms, and he is dirt cheap. Emmett Sheehan starting for the Dodgers, not yet in either player pool. Keep an eye on that. If he gets in, going to be one of my favorite value options. Obviously, a lot of risk in rostering a rookie making his debut, but on a slate lacking value, I do like him. Similar opinion of him as I will have of Wu if he does end up on the slate similarly priced. Darvish is a bit too cheap. Obviously, a tough matchup against Tampa, but I do like him here. McClanahan, expensive, but extremely talented, even in a tough matchup against San Diego. I think he's in play. Gallen, not as much K upside as we'd like to see, but I think he's one of the higher floor options on the slate. Abbott, yet to allow a run at the major league level. I think he's viable. And then Joe Ryan looks outstanding against the Tigers, just a little bit expensive. So once again, my name is Nick Marro with Occupy Fantasy. You can find me on Twitter at Nick Marro DFS. If you haven't already, please like the video, subscribe to the channel. That helps us climb up the YouTube algorithms and lets us know you want more free content like this. Also, feel free to drop questions in the comments. I will check them throughout the day. Um, and yeah, let's have some fun tonight and make some money. Take care, everyone. Have fun and good luck.